Kindly take your seats. We'll be beginning with the next session soon. By BIMTech and the National HRD Network in association with Deloitte and Power HR Forum. This session will bring out various perspectives on the emerging energy sector landscape, the challenges and opportunities. The Indian energy sector is experiencing a period of profound change, as we just heard during the inaugural session. Change that is moving companies to look and operate far differently than in the past. Industry leaders are facing and will continue to face new challenges in this new dynamic and evolving environment. To help our energy clients better understand and focus their leadership development efforts, BIMTech, along with NHRDN, under the guidance of Padma Shri Dr. Preetham Singh, conducted a qualitative research on the emerging business scenario coupled with the HR scenario, challenges, and the way forward in the energy sector. In each of the following sessions of the summit, we will share the key findings of our study so as to introduce broader perspectives for the panelists to deliberate on the issues emerging from these findings. So for this session, some of the salient findings which emerged from our study were that the Indian energy sector is facing disruptive technological changes that are making companies move from traditional model of power generation of coal, gas and fossil fuels to renewable energy sources like solar, wind and nuclear energy. In the evolving dynamics of the energy market, there is tremendous pressure from different stakeholders for better and cleaner energy sources set against the demanding environmental norms. The Indian power sector is in surplus zone, so the thrust has to be on plant efficiency and cost competitiveness with price leadership. And the global environment for oil and gas is very challenging due to the fluctuating prices and demand. Now, some of the issues that emerge from these findings, which this panel will deliberate on, are as follows: that power generation through renewable systems is a competitive source, but it also has associated challenges. How to address these challenges in terms of transmission, infrastructure and storage capability, especially in the case of solar generation. The next issue that emerges is how should the energy sector companies reinvent themselves to make significant global green footprints in future to actualize this vision. And looking at distribution challenges, what innovative distribution and commercial models should be adopted? Does the aggregator model focusing on complete value chain, providing linkages to backward and forward integration, deliver the beneficial results? And what is the impact of volatility and uncertainty in the global crude prices on the Indian companies? To discuss these issues at length, I take the opportunity to once again invite on stage our chairperson and moderator for the session, Mr. R.V. Shahi. Welcome on board, sir. I will also like to call upon the panelists for this session in alphabetical order. And in the interest of time, I will not read out their full profiles as they are already available with you in the summit souvenir. I request Dr. Ashok Balyan, CEO, Oil and Gas Business, Reliance ADAG, to please take his seat on the dais. Dr. Balyan has about 40 years of experience in oil and gas business in upstream LNG and downstream petrochemicals and renewable energy sectors. He is a topper from IIT Delhi in MTech and a PhD from Germany. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. I next invite Mr. Atul Sopti, CMD BHEL, on the panel. Mr. Sopti has a rich repertoire of diverse and versatile professional experience of more than 3 decades, working in various capacities in all major segments of BHEL. A mechanical graduate engineer with post-graduation in international management, Mr. Sopti has been bestowed with many awards, including the Eminent Engineering Personalities Award by the Institution of Engineers, India. Welcome to the panel, sir. May I now request Mr. I.S. Jha, CMD Power Grid Corporation, to please take his seat on the dais. Mr. Jha has 34 years of experience in power sector leadership positions, including hands-on experience in power system planning, engineering, design, project management, construction and operations, and maintenance. An electrical engineer from NIT Jamshedpur, he is spearheading some modern initiatives such as the smart grid that we heard about. It is indeed an honor to have you on the panel today, sir. Last but not the least, I invite Mr. Rajiv Sharma, CMD, Power Finance Corporation, to join the panel here. Mr. Sharma has more than 31 years of varied power sector experience, including policy making, initiating and implementing reform measures and project implementation at premier organizations. He holds BTech Electrical from GB Pant University and Master's degree in Engineering from IIT Roorkee and also an MBA from FMS Delhi University. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be an extremely insightful morning with this power-packed panel here. I now hand over the session to the chairperson and moderator, Mr. R.V. Shahi, for further discussions. Over to you, sir.
It's a good publicity of BIMTech. Thank you. I welcome all the panelists to this first session after the inaugural. I think inaugural event provided a good framework because we heard eminent speakers. We heard Dr. Pritam Singh, Dr. Chaturvedi. I shared my views. And above all, I think we had a very comprehensive coverage by the Power Secretary. Of course, they were mostly on, most of them were on power, but some total power and other aspects of energy did get covered. And one theme that emerged out of the inaugural, and that is change. Change has always been in the society, in a country, in an organization, but I think changes are very fast now. Another theme that emerged was predictable change and unpredictable change. Again, that always has been there, but again, the pace at which that is happening is very, pace and the size of changes and the coverage of changes and the intensity of impact that these changes have in our working. Those things got covered. This session we are trying to cover power on a few issues. There are many issues, but we will cover a few of them. And I had the privilege of writing to each of the panelists that out of many, many issues that are relevant to the energy sector, maybe half a dozen of these issues we will try to encompass during 1 hour, 15-20 minutes that we have. And so in the first round, what I have proposed that in 2 to 3 minutes, each of our very eminent panelists in the CEO group, they will tell us, each one of them will tell us an overview on HR challenges, and then we will get into specifics, very few points, which will capture, according to them, what they think in the contemporary situation are the emerging and likely changes which will create set of challenges to be dealt with, to be addressed, primarily by HR initiatives. I don't think we need to get into details of each function, but each one of them which has a bearing on how HR should prepare, how HR should address these challenges in the coming situation, in the emerging situations. So may I start with PHL Chairman, Dr. Sopti?
Thank you, sir, and good morning to all. As Mr. Shahi rightly mentioned, that major changes, disruptions are taking place in the business environment. I fully endorse his views. In fact, whether we admit or we don't admit, the reality is the kind of uncertainty at the moment which we are facing is unprecedented. And in fact, this kind of uncertainties would not have been faced by mankind ever. Reasons are many. First reason could be the information flow, abundance of information, as well as interpretation of that information. And in fact, energy sector also doesn't remain untouched with these changes, these challenges. In fact, I was very happy to see the research work which was presented here and the outcome of research work. In fact, those itself present the challenges for the energy sector. Just to mention 2-3 of that. The first is, of course, the composition of the energy mix, energy generation mix. In fact, that is bringing challenge not only to developers, that is bringing challenge to transmission companies, that is bringing challenge to the contractors, that is bringing challenges to the manufacturers. Reality is, climate change is not a global issue now, it's a local issue. In fact, we also need to face it and gear it up. There are a lot of issues, in fact, connected to the cleaner energy. I think during the course of discussion, we'll talk about it, about the energy storage, etc. But sooner or later, I'm sure that human ingenuity is great and we'll be able to overcome this. This brings a lot of HR challenges, that how to change the mindset of the people, how to train the people in the new kind of energy mix. Second point I like to mention about the power, there was mentioned that we are in the power surplus zone in the research finding I was seeing. Here I have a slight difference of opinion, which also I think we'll discuss in the course of discussions. I mean, it's surprising that about 4 years back, we were saying that we are having almost 6 to 7% of the energy shortage. We are having around 14 to 15% of the peak shortages. I am very happy that in the last 5 years of the current 5-year plan, we have been able to achieve, which was not achieved for almost 4 to 5 decades. 1 lakh megawatt has been commissioned in the, almost it's going to be commissioned in this current plan, taking it to 3 lakh plus. In fact, BHL also made a humble contribution in that, almost 50% has been contributed by BHL in that. But the issue still is, are we in the surplus zone? We are 1/3 of the world average. We are 20% of the Chinese per capita consumption. We are 11% of the German consumption. This is an issue of debate. Because we cannot take a short-term view in our excitement of having achieved the 1 lakh megawatt. We have to take the long-term view. Many of experts are sitting here, we know that any greenfield project which is conceptualized, it doesn't take less than 7 years to implement it and get it stabilized. That's the reality. Third challenge, which I like to say, is the technology disruptions which are taking place, which Mr. Pujari was also mentioning. It's not only the normal technology disruption, everybody will have to be ready for the kind of things of artificial intelligence, especially in the manufacturing sector, Internet of Things, and many more. And all these major changes which I highlighted require to be addressed by the HR professionals who have assembled here. We need to change the mindset. We need to create new skill sets. And we need to prepare all the manpower, women power, human resources so that they are ready for the uncertainties which I have been talking, which are at the moment. That's the reality. And we have to face it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, it works. Thank you, Mr. Sopti. Now, I think we move to Mr. Balian, because we will have this thermal power and power generators and what from petroleum and natural gas point of view. A couple of minutes from you, major challenges and HR perspective.
Yeah, thank you very much, Saisab. I think from oil and gas sector, if you see, India as a country is much different than many other countries. Our dependence is too much on imports. Particularly when we talk about oil and gas, I'd like to make a special mention and focus on gas, which has a linkage to power generation. In the energy mix, if you see, gas contributes to just about 7 to 8% now in the primary mix of the energy. If you see, sometime it had gone to double figures, but it has come back to about 7 to 8%. When we compare it with the world average, it's about 24%. And the trend has been for major developed countries as also developing countries is that the contribution of the gas is increasing and the contribution of coal is decreasing. Renewables is increasing. We don't see much change happening, although in the recent years we see the renewables coming up, but the gas contribution is one thing that we need to really examine why it is actually come down. When we see that gas and power industry actually function in tandem in most of the developed countries and developing countries, we see that this is a problem in our country. Need to examine why it is not taking off. I compare that we have a project in neighboring country, power generation on gas-based utility. We are trying to implement one. If it can happen in our neighbor's country, why it is not happening in our country? We see on the other hand, Pakistan in the short time of about 2.5 years has established and developed capabilities of gas-based power generation, using innovative ways and cutting short the administrative process and short time, and they are all set to really go in a big way on gas-based power generation. Why it is not happening there? I think these are the business issues that we need to see. Second point is that from the HR perspective, I think that traditionally the academia, industry, there has been a disconnect. And this disconnect is continuing. In some of the areas we do see some kind of a common ground emerging, but I find that the academia moves on its own and the industry's requirement, needs, aspirations, emerging areas are not really being taken into account by the academia to develop those new emerging areas in terms of developing more people and creating more courses that are of direct impact to the industry. It is left to the industry to really take the freshers and spend year to 2 years time to really develop them and transform them to contributing professionals. I think this is one area where I strongly recommend that the academia need to develop expertise and new courses which are focusing on the new emerging area of the industry. The third is that transforming a good professional into a businessman actually. We expect that all our youngsters, all young people should actually start speaking the business language. We talk about business language. How do you make a good professional in an organization talk in business sense? He can be a brilliant engineer or a professional, but then really talking in a business language, that's important. That's lacking. That's another challenge here. And the third part I'd like to put on the linking it to HR. From the company's functioning also, I think the today's CEO is focusing more on what's happening right now and the present is the focus. There is a lack of focus on what all kinds of system procedures that have become redundant, outdated, irrelevant to the business model right now. There's a little focus on that. And I think that if you have to really grow and perform in the changing time, and I'll come to a change also, there has to be a focus on at the same time that what is the performance today is okay, but what has become redundant, system, procedures, way of working has to be eliminated. So there has to be a selective destruction and removal from the organization, all old processes, systems, procedures which have become irrelevant now in the present business environment. And therefore, once you selectively destruct that, you need, then only you can create something new through innovation. So I think this focus on today, that this business model, business as usual, that you are continuing, we have been doing this for long time, the organizations are taking a lot of time to realize that their business models have become outdated.
Thank you. That will do. I think Mr. Jha, same issue, couple of minutes, major challenges in the sector and HR perspective.
Sir, being from Power Grid, I am just concentrating on the transmission. What I have seen, the changes, what is seen today, in transmission or in power sector, we are seeing the changes since the Electricity Act has come. If you see the last 5 years, the generation started coming up 5 times. Earlier 5,000 megawatt per year, 20,000 megawatts. Then mostly from the private sector. The requirement of flow was the 360 degree, not only directional. This all the challenges has to be solved through the transmission only, trading. And not only that, technology-wise, it was felt that the system which we are, technology which we are adopted in transmission like 400 kV was not sufficient to cater all this requirement. That's how we have upgraded to the 765 kV and HVDC. The major challenge was at that time, the country did not have the technology. Then the challenge was not only to develop it to match the generation, but also to establish the Make in India. I can say with the proud, sir, in this transmission, in 2008 and 9, not a single equipment was being manufactured in India. Today, all 100% equipment is manufactured in India. That was the great achievement. But challenges for Power Grid has come up, the how to cope up with these technical challenges. Because just we have come out from the 765